The Menendez brothers have been serving more than 3 decades in prison for the murder of their parents.
LA County District Attorney Nathan Hochman is urging a judge to deny Erik and Lyle's request for a new trial. Joining us now is attorney Joanne Molinaro. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, ladies, for having me.
Can you dive in here? This happened last week where we heard from Nathan Hochman saying he did not want this to have a new trial. Can you take us through why that would be and what we're kind of looking at this morning?
Yes, well, the DA did a really good job of explaining there are really 2 pending motions in front of the judge. We have the writ of habeas corpus, which is essentially a request for a new trial, which is what he addressed in his press conference. And we also have a motion for resentencing, which he alluded to as well. This press conference really talked about whether or not the judge should give a do-over to the brothers, basically saying, well, there are 2 new pieces of evidence that the judge now needs to consider and that a new jury should consider. What the DA essentially explained was that these 2 new pieces of evidence weren't good enough to merit a do-over for these brothers.
It would also be really expensive, wouldn't it, to have another trial?
It could, I mean, certainly it would be expensive. I mean, the brothers would have to pay for the trial, obviously the defense, but also the prosecutor would then have to go through getting a new jury, arguing motions in front of the court, hauling in, 55,000 pages of documents that he alluded to, in addition to any new evidence, which is, of course, what the brothers have alleged there is.
So when it comes to breaking down what factors they're considering for resentencing, what do those look like?
So resentencing is an entirely different motion, and that is pending before the court. There's a hearing on that in less than a month, and the DA alluded to the fact that that's an entirely different analysis. Here in the habeas corpus, we're talking about sort of technical legal issues, but when we're talking about, well, what have the brothers done since they've been in jail? We've heard reports of them, starting a meditation workshop, doing hospice care, being model citizens in jail, and also what's into consideration is the fact that they did suffer likely an immense amount of abuse from their parents. These are all things that the judge should take into consideration when deciding the resentencing motion, which again is an entirely different matter.
Now there can be a whole wrench thrown into this. That they may throw that piece of it out, right? And then the governor could end up stepping in. How does that play out?
That's exactly right, Jamie. The governor has what the DA called unilateral power to grant clemency to the brothers. Now, the governor in this case has already said, well, I'm going to kind of wait to see what the prosecutor says. And this is a new prosecutor. Remember, the old one is the one that filed the motion for resentencing. This new one seems to have perhaps a different tack and a different approach to this. The governor has said, I'm waiting to see what the prosecutor's office is going to say because, again, there's 55,000 pages of documents that maybe the governor doesn't have time to be looking through. He's got a lot of other things on his plate at the moment. And so we'll see what the governor can do. But ultimately, yes, there is power in him to do the same thing that the judge may or may not do in March.
And realistically, what could happen here?
Well, I think realistically, from what I've seen, and based upon the press conference that the DA issued last week, it's very unlikely, in my opinion, that the DA is going to recommend a resentencing. Now, what could happen, though, and we've seen this in the papers, is that maybe he may recommend resentencing for one brother and not the other. That's also a possibility. But if at the end of the day, the brothers don't get a resentencing under the pending motion, I think their last shot is with the governor.
It's just so fascinating to me how pop culture is now played into all of these cases. And I would think as an attorney, you're watching this very closely because anything that happens now, I mean, not only a sequel for any of the documentaries that are out there, but can have legal repercussions in other cases.
It absolutely can. And that is one of the interesting things. How is the shifting cultural mores, how are, public perception, as you will, is that going to play a role in this? And I think it's really telling that the motion that the predecessor, the DA's predecessor filed, was filed only 2 weeks after that Netflix special aired and everyone was completely immersed in this viral docudrama series. I think that's very telling. I obviously didn't make mention of the Netflix docuseries in the papers, but it's all on everyone's minds.
The power of TV.
Yes.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for being here and breaking this all down for us this morning. We appreciate it.